What if I told you that Edgar Lungu's burial has turned into an international scandal? That in South Africa's top courtroom, secrets are being exposed, deportation threats are looming, and Zambia's former first family is facing humiliation like never before? Tonight, we reveal the shocking details hidden behind the Pretoria case, Esther Lungu's silence, and why this trial is shaking not just Zambia, but the entire African continent. South Africa's courts have delivered a shocking blow to the Lungu family. What was meant to be a quiet burial for former President Edgar Lungu has exploded into a courtroom battle, with secrets of his legacy exposed, deportation threats looming, and Zambia's image on the line. In this documentary-style report, we uncover why South Africa's top judges are refusing to stay silent, the hidden burial secrets linked to Edgar Lungu, how Esther Lungu is coping with mounting pressure, what this means for President Hakainde Hichilema (HH) and Zambia's political future. From Lusaka to Pretoria, from Zambia to the global stage, this story is bigger than just a funeral. It's about power, politics, and the shocking truths now unfolding before the world. Pretoria courtroom drama. The Pretoria courtroom drama surrounding the burial of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu, who died on June 5, 2025, in a South African hospital, is a high-stakes legal and political saga that has captured attention across Africa and beyond. The dispute centers on a bitter feud between the Lungu family and the Zambian government, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, over where and how Lungu's body should be buried. The legal battle has unfolded in South Africa's judicial system, specifically in the Pretoria High Court and the Constitutional Court, and has been marked by emotional outbursts, last-minute injunctions, and intense public scrutiny. Key courtroom moments. The Pretoria High Court became the epicenter of this drama on June 25, 2025, when Zambia's Attorney General, Mulalo Kabesha, filed an urgent injunction to halt a private burial planned by the Lungu family at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Johannesburg. Mourners had already gathered, and a funeral mass had concluded when the court's order was announced, causing chaos and distress among attendees. The court, led by Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwaba, ruled that the burial could not proceed until the dispute was resolved, setting a hearing date for August 4, 2025. On August 8, 2025, the Pretoria High Court ruled in favor of the Zambian government, ordering the immediate surrender of Lungu's body to Zambian authorities for repatriation and a state funeral in Lusaka. The ruling emphasized that a former president's burial is a matter of national interest, overriding personal or familial wishes. Judge Ledwaba stated, "A former president's personal wishes or the wishes of his family cannot outweigh the right of the state to honor that individual with a state funeral." This decision sparked intense emotional reactions, particularly from Lungu's sister, Bertha Lungu, who was reported to have broken down in tears and shouted at Kabesha, accusing the government of disrespecting her brother's wishes. The Lungu family promptly filed for leave to appeal, delaying the repatriation of Lungu's body. On August 26, 2025, South Africa's Constitutional Court upheld the High Court's ruling, dismissing the family's appeal on the grounds that they failed to provide sufficient legal basis for overturning the decision. This ruling reaffirmed that Lungu's body must be returned to Zambia, but the family's continued legal maneuvers, including a request for an expedited trial, have kept the body in South Africa, stored at Two Mountains Mortuary in Pretoria, under private security due to alleged unauthorized attempts to remove it. Critical analysis. The Pretoria courtroom drama highlights the intersection of law, politics, and personal vendettas. The Zambian government's insistence on a state funeral can be seen as an assertion of state sovereignty and institutional continuity, as argued by Dr. Mundia Kabinga, who views it as a sign of Zambia's maturing democratic institutions. However, the Lungu family's resistance, backed by their claim to honor Lungu's final wishes, raises questions about individual autonomy versus state protocol. The emotional outbursts, particularly from Bertha Lungu, reflect the family's perception of being marginalized and disrespected, which some analysts argue could have been mitigated by a more empathetic approach from Hichilema's administration. The involvement of South Africa's courts also raises diplomatic considerations. By ruling in favor of Zambia, South Africa risks setting a precedent that could complicate interstate relations, as noted by Kabinga, who suggests that hosting a foreign leader's burial without their government's consent could undermine regional cooperation. The drama in Pretoria, therefore, is not just a Zambian issue, but a case study in post-colonial African governance and sovereignty. The humiliation of the Lungu family. The term humiliation, in the context of the Lungu family's experience in the South African courts, refers to the emotional, public, and legal setbacks they have faced in their attempt to control Edgar Lungu's burial. The family's distress has been amplified by the high-profile nature of the case, their repeated legal defeats, and the perception of being overpowered by the Zambian government's legal machinery. Emotional toll in court. The most visceral moment of perceived humiliation occurred on August 8, 2025, when the Pretoria High Court ruled against the Lungu family's wishes to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa. Bertha Lungu, the former president's sister, was overcome with grief and anger, reportedly shouting at Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha, "Lungu is not your father's son. He's not Hakaine's son. This is really painful. I don't want to go to Zambia." Her outburst, witnessed by family members, including Lungu's daughter Tassila, and reported widely in the media, underscored the family's sense of betrayal and powerlessness. The public nature of this emotional breakdown, coupled with the family's need to attend court in funeral attire after after a halted burial on June 25, 2025, added to their public distress. Legal defeats. The Lungu family's legal efforts have been consistently thwarted, intensifying their sense of humiliation. Their initial plan for a private burial in Johannesburg was stopped by an urgent court injunction on June 25, 2025, leaving mourners confused and the family scrambling to respond. The August 8th ruling ordering the immediate repatriation of Lungu's body was another blow, with the court dismissing their argument that Lungu's personal wishes should take precedence. The final legal setback came on August 26, 2025, when South Africa's Constitutional Court dismissed their appeal, affirming the High Court's decision. Each loss has been portrayed in some media outlets and ex-posts as a public defeat, with commentators like @MalikaNusterZMB noting the family's hiring of a prominent lawyer as a desperate move that failed to sway the courts. Critical analysis. The humiliation of the Lungu family is a subjective term that depends on perspective. From the family's viewpoint, the repeated court rulings against them, combined with the emotional toll of having their plans disrupted, constitute a profound loss of dignity. The government's legal victories, backed by the argument of national interest, have painted the family as obstructing Zambia's traditions, which some see as a deliberate attempt to marginalize them. However, critics like political historian Sishiwa argue that the government's approach has lacked empathy, exacerbating the family's distress and fueling perceptions of vindictiveness. The hiring of Tembika Ngukuatobi, a celebrated lawyer, was an attempt to regain control, but the Constitutional Court's dismissal of their appeal suggests that legal avenues are narrowing, potentially deepening their sense of defeat. The humiliation is not just personal but political, as it reinforces the narrative of Hichilema's dominance over Lungu's legacy. Yet, this framing risks oversimplifying a complex issue. The government's insistence on a state funeral aligns with Zambia's post-colonial tradition of institutional continuity, but the heavy-handed legal approach may have unnecessarily alienated Lungu supporters, deepening Zambia's political divisions. Burial secrets revealed in court. The phrase burial secrets suggests that the court proceedings uncovered hidden or controversial details about Edgar Lungu's final wishes or the circumstances surrounding his death and funeral plans. While the available sources do not explicitly detail sensational secrets, they do reveal significant points of contention that have fueled speculation and public interest. Lungu's final wishes. The most prominent secret revealed in court is Lungu's alleged dying wish that President Hichilema not be involved in or attend his funeral. The Lungu family, through spokesperson Makibi Zulu, has consistently emphasized that Lungu explicitly instructed that Hichilema, his long-standing political rival, should not come anywhere near his body. This wish, rooted in their bitter feud, became a central issue in the legal battle. The family argued that a state funeral presided over by Hichilema would violate Lungu's dignity and final instructions, prompting their push for a private burial in South Africa. The court, however, rejected this argument, citing legal precedent that a former president's burial is a matter of public interest. The revelation of Lungu's wish, while not a secret in the traditional sense, was significant because it exposed the depth of animosity between the two leaders and shaped the family's legal strategy. The public disclosure of this wish in court filings and media reports has fueled speculation about Lungu's mindset in his final days and the extent to which his family is determined to honor his instructions, even at the cost of legal battles. Critical analysis. The burial secrets revealed in court are less about hidden conspiracies and more about the public airing of private grievances and political rivalries. Lungu's wish to exclude Hichilema from his funeral is a significant revelation, as it underscores the personal and political rift that continues to shape Zambia's political landscape. However, the court's dismissal of this wish as subordinate to national interest suggests a legal system prioritizing state protocol over individual desires, a stance that aligns with Zambia's historical precedent but risks alienating Lungu supporters. The conspiracy theories, while not substantiated, are a byproduct of the case's high visibility and Zambia's cultural context. The government's failure to address these rumors directly, as noted by Sishiwa, has allowed them to proliferate, further complicating the narrative. The security concerns around Lungu's body, though not fully detailed, hint at underlying fears of tampering or political maneuvering, which could fuel further speculation if not resolved transparently. Esther Lungu's silence explained. Esther Lungu, the widow of Edgar Lungu, has been notably silent throughout much of the public and legal discourse surrounding her husband's burial, despite her prominent role as the former First Lady. Her lack of public statements or visible leadership in the dispute has drawn attention, particularly given her emotional presence at court hearings and her ongoing legal battles in Zambia. Context of Esther Lungu's role. Esther Lungu, as the former First Lady, was a public figure during her husband's presidency and has faced significant scrutiny since Hichilema's administration took power. She, along with her daughter Tassila, has been charged with corruption and possession of suspected proceeds of crime, charges they claim are politically motivated. These legal challenges have placed Esther in a precarious position, likely influencing her decision to maintain a low profile during the burial dispute. Emotional presence in court. While Esther has not spoken publicly, her presence at key court hearings, particularly the June 25th and August 8, 2025 sessions, was marked by visible distress. On June 25th, she arrived at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Johannesburg in funeral attire, only to learn that the burial had been halted by the court. On August 8, she was present when Bertha Lungu broke down in court, with reports describing her as visibly upset but restrained compared to her sister-in-law's outburst. Her silence in these moments may reflect a deliberate choice to avoid escalating the situation or drawing further attention to her family's legal and political vulnerabilities. Legal and political pressures. Esther Lungu's silence can be attributed to the intense legal and political pressures she faces. Her ongoing corruption case, which includes charges of stealing cars, has kept her under scrutiny in Zambia. The government's actions against her and her daughter, combined with Lungu's accusations of harassment before his death, likely contribute to her reticence. Publicly challenging Hichilema's government or engaging in the burial dispute could risk further legal repercussions or fuel perceptions of defiance, which might complicate her defense in court. Cultural and personal factors. In Zambian and broader African cultural contexts, widows often take a secondary role in public mourning, with family members like siblings or children, in this case, Bertha and Tassila Lungu, taking more vocal roles. Esther's silence may align with these norms, allowing her to grieve privately while others, such as Makibi Zulu, the family spokesperson, and Bertha Lungu, handle public statements and legal advocacy. Additionally, the emotional toll of losing her husband and navigating a contentious legal battle in a foreign country may have prompted her to avoid the spotlight. Critical analysis. Esther Lungu's silence is a strategic and cultural response to a fraught situation. By remaining quiet, she avoids antagonizing Hichilema's government, which has already targeted her with legal action. Her presence in court, however, signals her support for the family's position, even if she delegates public communication to others. This approach may also reflect a desire to preserve her dignity amid the public humiliation described in the headline, as taking a vocal stance could invite further criticism or legal scrutiny. Critics might argue that her silence weakens the family's case by limiting their public advocacy, but it also shields her from becoming a direct target in the escalating political narrative. Deportation threats and legal risks. The mention of deportation threats in the headline is not explicitly detailed in the provided sources, but the context of the legal battle and the Lungu family's presence in South Africa raises questions about their legal status and potential risks. Below, I explore possible interpretations of this phrase and the broader legal risks facing the family. Potential deportation threats. While no direct references to deportation threats appear in the sources, the Lungu family's prolonged stay in South Africa, coupled with their legal battle against the Zambian government, could theoretically expose them to immigration scrutiny. Edgar Lungu traveled to South Africa for medical treatment as a private citizen, reportedly on a commercial flight, after losing his retirement benefits due to his re-entry into politics. Family members, including Esther and Tassila, have been in South Africa to manage the funeral arrangements and legal proceedings, which may require temporary visas or permits. If South African authorities perceive the family's actions, such as their resistance to court orders or prolonged presence without clear legal status, as a violation of immigration laws, they could face pressure to leave. The hiring of Tembika Ngukuatobi, a prominent human rights lawyer, suggests the family is aware of potential legal vulnerabilities and is seeking robust representation to protect their interests. Additionally, the Zambian government's influence in the case, backed by South Africa's courts, could indirectly pressure the family to comply with repatriation orders or risk complications with their stay in South Africa. Critical analysis. The absence of explicit deportation threats in the sources suggests that this aspect of the headline may be sensationalized or speculative. However, the family's precarious legal and political position in both South Africa and Zambia creates a context where such threats could emerge, particularly if they are perceived as defying court orders or overstaying visas. The legal risks are more concrete, with the family facing potential penalties for non-compliance and the loss of their appeal. The government's strong legal backing, combined with South Africa's judicial alignment, places the family in a vulnerable position where continued resistance could lead to further isolation or legal consequences. What this means for HH and Zambia. The burial dispute has significant implications for President Hakainde Hichilema and Zambia's political, social, and institutional landscape. The saga has exposed deep divisions, heightened political tensions, and raised questions about governance, reconciliation, and national unity. Political implications for Hichilema. For Hichilema, the dispute is a double-edged sword. On one hand, his administration's legal victory in South Africa reinforces his authority and Zambia's institutional framework. By securing the repatriation of Lungu's body, Hichilema can present himself as a defender of national protocol and sovereignty, aligning with the argument that former presidents belong to the nation, not just their families. The government's reference to the Kenneth Kaunda precedent strengthens this narrative, positioning Hichilema as a leader committed to continuity and tradition. However, the heavy-handed approach, including the last-minute injunction on June 25th and the perceived lack of empathy, has drawn criticism. Sishiwa argues that Hichilema's failure to publicly distance himself from the funeral or rein in officials making provocative statements has fueled perceptions of vindictiveness. This could damage his image as a unifying leader, particularly among Lungu supporters in regions like Eastern Province, where the PF holds significant influence. The dispute's impact on the 2026 elections is a key concern, as Sishiwa notes that it has exacerbated Zambia's regional and political polarization. Critical analysis. For Hichilema, the burial dispute is a test of leadership. While he has secured legal victories, the political cost of alienating Lungu's supporters and fueling conspiracy theories could undermine his broader agenda of national unity. A more conciliatory approach, such as publicly agreeing to stay away from the funeral, might have resolved the issue earlier, as suggested by Sishiwa. For Zambia, the dispute highlights the fragility of political reconciliation in a polarized climate. The government's legal success may strengthen its institutional credibility, but without addressing the underlying grievances of Lungu's supporters, it risks deepening divisions that could impact the 2026 elections and beyond. Global reaction and conclusion. The global reaction to the Lungu burial dispute has been relatively muted compared to its significance in Zambia and South Africa, but it has drawn attention from regional media, African political analysts, and some international outlets. The saga's implications for African governance, interstate relations, and post-colonial institutional building have sparked limited but notable commentary. Regional and international media coverage. African media outlets, such as Al Jazeera, BBC, Reuters, and the African Press Agency, have covered the dispute extensively, framing it as a clash between personal wishes and state authority. The BBC highlighted the presidential feud that even death couldn't end, emphasizing the personal animosity between Lungu and Hichilema. Al Jazeera and Reuters focused on the legal proceedings and their implications for Zambia's political landscape, while South African outlets like the Mail and Guardian analyzed the broader context of post-colonial state building. The New York Times provided a global perspective, noting the dispute as a continuation of a long-standing political rivalry. African political commentary. African analysts have viewed the dispute as a case study in post-colonial governance. Dr. Mundia Kabinga's analysis in the Mail and Guardian frames Zambia's insistence on repatriation as a sign of institutional resilience, arguing that it strengthens democratic foundations across the continent. Conversely, Sishiwa's commentary highlights the dispute's role in exacerbating Zambia's political divisions, warning of its potential impact on the 2026 elections. The involvement of South Africa's courts has also raised questions about interstate relations, with Kabinga noting that hosting a foreign leader's burial without their government's consent could set a problematic precedent. Social media and public sentiment. On X, reactions have been polarized, reflecting Zambia's divided public opinion. Posts like at Malak_ZMB's comment on the family's legal strategy and at Sishiwa's mention of occult rumors illustrate the mix of skepticism, humor, and conspiracy theories circulating online. These posts, while not factual evidence, highlight the dispute's resonance with Zambians and the African diaspora, who see it as emblematic of broader political tensions. Limited global attention. Beyond Africa, the dispute has received limited attention, likely due to its regional specificity and the absence of major geopolitical implications. However, the involvement of South Africa's constitutional court and the precedent it sets for interstate disputes could draw interest from legal scholars and African studies experts. The case's human drama, marked by Bertha Lungu's courtroom outburst and the family's defiance, has also garnered some international curiosity, particularly in outlets covering African politics. Conclusion. The Lungu family's legal battle in South Africa over Edgar Lungu's burial is a multifaceted saga that transcends a simple dispute over a funeral. It encapsulates Zambia's political polarization, the tension between personal wishes and state protocol, and the challenges of post-colonial governance. The Pretoria courtroom drama, marked by emotional outbursts and legal maneuvering, has exposed the deep rift between the Lungu family and Hichilema's government, with the family's perceived humiliation stemming from their repeated legal losses and public scrutiny. The revelation of Lungu's wish to exclude Hichilema from his funeral, combined with conspiracy theories and security concerns, has added layers of intrigue to the case. Esther Lungu's silence reflects a strategic and cultural response to her vulnerable position, while the absence of explicit deportation threats suggests a sensationalized headline, though legal risks remain significant. For Hichilema and Zambia, the dispute is a test of leadership and institutional maturity, with potential ramifications for the 2026 elections. Globally, the case has drawn attention as a microcosm of African political dynamics, but its impact remains largely regional. The resolution of this dispute, whether through negotiation or further legal battles, will shape Zambia's political trajectory and its ability to reconcile competing visions of tradition, governance, and national identity. For now, Lungu's body remains in South Africa, a symbol of a feud that continues to divide a nation even in death.